Welcome to Up All Night DIY. I'm Monica. Thanks for joining me. It's a Can Sleep Creation Spring Fever collaboration hosted by me and Donna Shabby Meets Bling. We're joined by some of our most favorite creative friends to bring you lots of fun seasonal projects. I have a super easy, very beginner-friendly clay project for you, so let's get into it. I'll be using some DIYS air dry clay, 3 different sized styrofoam balls, a wood box that I got from the Dollar Tree, which is also where I got my styrofoam balls, and some toothpicks. So to get us started, I'm going to take my largest foam ball and I'm going to press it onto the table to create a flat spot. This is so the ball won't roll away as we're working on it. And I'm going to repeat that process on the 2 smaller balls as well. And we're going to use these 3 styrofoam balls to make the cutest little spring chickens, also known as my lucky cluckers. Now that our foam balls are prepped and ready to go, we're going to grab a handful of clay. We're going to knead it. This is going to condition the clay, which will distribute the moisture, and that's going to help prevent cracking as the clay dries. Once my clay is conditioned, I'm going to roll it out nice and flat. I want to make sure I roll enough to cover all of my foam balls. We're going to start with the large ball first. And I'm just going to lay my clay right over top of it. Press it really firmly to make sure that the clay is adhering to the styrofoam. Now this is the crunchy styrofoam. If you're using the smooth kind, you may want to either score some texture marks into the styrofoam ball or maybe even use some tacky glue before you put your clay on. I'm going to trim away some of this excess clay and I'm going to keep that handy. I'm just going to keep pressing the clay to the foam ball and I'm going to roll it around on the table. This will both help it adhere to the styrofoam ball as well as, smooth it out. I'll continue to add clay into any of the bare spots until the entire foam ball is completely covered. Rolling the ball on the table has gotten my clay pretty smooth, but to get it even smoother, I'm going to lightly dampen it with this paintbrush here. So I'll get some water on there, and then I'm going to grab a plastic spoon and I'm going to use the back of this spoon to help smooth the clay. And this really does a very nice job, and it's very quick. This is a good alternative if you don't have clay tools. You can just use plastic forks, knives, spoons. Really simple. I'm just going to continue until I'm happy with the texture of the clay on my foam ball. I don't mind a few bumps. Doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, just relatively smooth. You know what I'm saying? I've broken a toothpick in half and I'm going to insert it into the foam ball on a slight angle. This is so we can attach our first chicken's head. So as you can see, it's kind of off-centered a little bit. And there we go. Sticking out, I don't know, maybe ½ an inch or so. To create our first chicken's head, we're going to grab a little bit of clay, kind of roll it up into a ball. And I'm going to press a flat spot on the bottom of the clay ball so that I can attach it over top of the toothpick. So you can see it's kind of bell-shaped. This will work for the big guy. Before I attach the head, I'm going to grab my pointy tool here and add some score marks to the clay around the toothpick. And I'm also going to score the clay on the bottom of the head there. You know what? Dampen it a little bit. And then we'll push that right into place over top of the toothpick, and I'll use my fingers to push the clay into place. And now I want to incorporate the fresh clay with the clay on the foam ball. So once again, I've lightly dampened it, and now I'm going to take my pointy tool here and just spread that clay right at the seam. I'll spread it down onto the foam ball. This clay spreads very easily, and it's really nice to work with. It's so easy to smooth it. We want to do our best to make this look like it's one solid piece. So the fresh clay that we just added to create the head should look like it's one solid piece with the body. We're just going to keep going until we're happy with it. I think that looks pretty smooth, so let's move on to the next part. So next, we're going to want to create the chicken's cone, beak, and tail. So I'm going to grab a little bit of clay here and kind of roll a little bit of a cane, rounding the ends. And I'm going to nip off the rounded ends. And with that leftover piece of clay, I'm going to round that off too. And I'll cut that down to size. These 3 wee pieces are going to comprise his comb. So what I'm going to do is, since he's on the larger side, I'm going to stick a half a toothpick into the center of his head, and I'm going to add one of our clay bumps right over top of that. And we're going to incorporate this, the clay we just added, with the clay on the head, just like we did before. So we'll use our pointy tool and just make sure that the clay is well incorporated and blended. At this point, I really just want to make sure that, it's well stuck on there. We're going to smooth it out a little more after we add the other 2 sections of his comb. I'm going to add the other 2 pieces, one to the front and one to the back. And again, I'm going to use my pointy tool to incorporate them. Now that all 3 pieces are in place, I'm going to use my tool here to shape them and smooth them until I'm happy with it. I'm going to add another small piece of toothpick to the front of his head, and we're going to attach his beak here. His beak is, again, just a little piece of clay that we kind of rolled into almost like a chocolate chip shape, and we're going to score the clay around the toothpick, and then we're going to pop his beak into place. And for this guy, I'm going to shape it so that it sticks up a little bit, and once I get it in place, I'll incorporate it again with my pointy tool. I'm going to go very gently here since the clay, since it's such a small amount of clay that I'm adding. But it's easy enough to smooth. Okay, good stuff. Now, let's make his tail. Once again, I'm going to use a piece of toothpick to anchor. So I'm going to do my best to line it up with his comb so that the comb and the feathers of his tail, are all aligned. And this process is very similar to how we made his comb, only we're going to go a little thicker and a little bigger for his tail. So I just rolled another cane of clay and cut the rounded end off. I score the clay around the toothpick before adding. There we go, we'll pop that into place. And again, this is going to be the center feather. So I'll do a little bit of incorporating, and then we're going to add one to the front and one to the back. And we'll incorporate those too. Now, I personally am going to keep these guys really simple. You could always add a little detail, use your pointy tool or toothpick to add some grooves to make the feathers look like they have texture. But for me, I'm just going to leave them plain and simple, just like this. And we're going to get that last one into place. And of course, we'll do a little smoothing, and then we can set this guy aside and work on the other 2. So my friends, it is the exact same process for the 2 smaller balls. We're going to flatten some clay, cover the balls just like we did the larger ball. We'll cut away any excess, fill in any gaps. We're going to smooth the clay just like before. And once again, I added the head the same way, just made it slightly smaller, kept it in proportion with the size of the ball. And I think I'm going to have this guy looking up a little more. So again, it's just a matter of where you want to place his comb, his beak. This guy, I'm going to have him with his nose more up in the air. And I think I'll keep this smaller guy more like the first guy, just kind of looking ahead. So once I finish assembling these guys, we're going to let them sit overnight to dry. In the meantime, let's work on our wee box nest. Right, so our clucks are going to be nesting in this little box here. This is just one of those Dollar Tree wood boxes. and I am going to base coat it with Americana Sugary Peach. Now I do realize that it's kind of hard to see the contrast between the color of the box and the color of the paint, but in person it is much more of a peachy hue. Alright, so I'm going to give that 2 coats of the Sugary Peach. I thought it would be fun to add some grain sack stripes, so I just placed some painter's tape on 2 of the sides of the box, and I'm going to apply a coat of the Sugary Peach over top of the tape. This will, or should anyway, prevent bleeding of the top coat. You can also do this with Mod Podge. You've seen me do that plenty of times, but I already had some of the Sugary Peach on the plate, so why waste it, right? Yeah, so you just want to go right over top of your tape. Now I'm going to do a top coat of Ceramcoat Wedgewood Green. It's this pretty vintage springy green color, and I'll give this 2 coats. And of course I'm going to do all 4 sides, as well as the inside of the box. Okay, let's see what these stripes look like. That's pretty good. That's pretty crisp. Yeah, that one's good too. Yeah, not bad. I think there looks like there's a little bleeding there, but you know what? We can always touch that up. Okay, so we're going to let everything set overnight, and we'll get back to it in the morning. Well guys, our cluckers are nice and dry, and they're ready to paint. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm pulling out that Sugary Peach color again, and I'm going to base coat all 3 of the cluckers all with the Sugary Peach. To add some depth to our clucks, I'm going to dry brush very lightly a coat of Americana Bleached sand. Now, again, it's not much of a contrast, so kind of hard to see on film, but in person, it does add a nice texture feel to it. And again, all 3 clucks will get a dry brush. I'm going to mix a little bit of Folk Art Floating Medium with Ceramcoat Maple Sugar Tan, just to kind of give the maple sugar tan a little bit of a translucence, and I'm going to paint all 3 of their beaks. So I'm just going to get some of that medium on my brush, and then I'll pick up some of the paint, and just going to fill in the beak. I like how the floating medium gives the color a watery feel. So each of my chickens are going to have green as their main color. So this guy, his comb and his tail is going to be Folk Art Thicket, which is a deep rich green color. I'm going to apply 2 coats to front and back of the comb and the tail. I'm going to use 3 different shades of green here. This is the darkest green. Yeah, I'm digging the shade of green. It's got me in that spring spirit. It's got a little bit of a blue thing going on too, so I really like that. I'm using Wedgewood green on the medium clucks, comb, and tail. This is a lovely, very spring, vibrant green. Has a little bit of a vintage thing going on. You know, it's Wedgewood, so very traditional, very pretty. And our littlest cluck, I'm going to use some Ceramcoat Sea Foam to color in his comb and his tail. They're just getting simple dip dots for eyes, and I'm using Hippo gray. So just doing my best to make them look as even as possible. Well, this guy's eyes, well, that's a little wacky, but that's okay. There's one in every crowd. He's cute. Now I want to embellish each of the chickens. So this big guy, he's going to get stripes with the sea foam as a base. So I'm just going to stripe right around his body. The middle guy is going to get checks also with the sea foam. I'm just freehanding these. I'm not going to worry, if they're perfect. Whatever. They're whimsical little guys, and that's what it's all about. And the wheat clock is going to get sea foam polka dots. So I'm going to use a dowel here and just dot, dot, dot. Once I get all his dots on, I'm going to let these guys dry for a little bit before I add a little more embellishment. I want to pull in the color of his comb, so I am going to side load with some of that thicket, and I've got some of my floating medium on my brush. I'm going to float some of the thicket right down the one side of all the stripes around his body. I'll reload my brush as needed with either the paint or the medium or both. Of course, this is personal preference. You don't have to do this. You do whatever you like. Maybe you don't want stripes on your guy. Maybe you want something else. Maybe you just want them plain. Whatever you think is best, whatever blows your hair back, do that. I'm also going to shade the little checks on the middle guy. And I'm going to use some of that Wedgewood green to add smaller dots inside the bigger dots on the wee clock. And once I get all the dots in place, I'm going to set these aside to dry for about 20 minutes or so. In the meantime, I'm going to stamp shamrock right in the middle of our grain stripe on our box. So again, I'm using the Wedgewood green, just loading up my stamp here, and I'll get a lovely wee shamrock right there in the middle. Now I'm going to float some of that thicket along the edge of the stripes here, and I'm also going to do around the blank edges of the box too, just to pull it all together. I always like to add a little bit of shading to any of my painted pieces. It's just my preference, but again, it's totally up to you, whatever you want to do. Once this is done, I'm going to give this 2 coats of a clear matte sealer spray. To complete our Lucky Clucks, I'm going to pounce on a top coat of DecoArt Multipurpose Sealer using a cosmetic sponge. This will not only protect the clay pieces, but it will also give them a nice finished look. And these Lucky Clucks are ready for spring. Shall we take a look? I think this family of Lucky Clucks turned out really cute. I love the green. They were so simple and easy to make. You gotta agree, just about anybody can make these, and I highly recommend giving it a try. They really were a lot of fun to make. They're very quick and very easy, and I think these would be really cute with my other St. Patrick's Day decor. You know what I'm saying? So let me know what you think, and let me know if you think you'd give them a try. I want to thank Dawn of Shabby Meets Bling for co-hosting with me, and I want to thank all the creators who participated with us. Please be sure to check out everyone's videos. You're going to love them, and show everybody some love. You're going to find links to that playlist and to Dawn's channel in the description box, along with a list of my supplies. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. Stay creative, my friends. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Up all night with Monica.